Not downtown, not Reserve Street, Burn Street.
Looking great is not just helpful for females. In today's competitive business market, men are finding cosmetic work can give them the edge they need to stay ahead of the game. You're invited to see for yourself how Northwest Plastic Surgery Associates' discreet laser and cosmetic treatment programs are helping men of all ages regain youthfulness and confidence, sometimes in as little as one visit. Northwest Plastic Surgery Associates can help reverse years of stress and time in the sun with skincare and skin rejuvenation services, or let them help you permanently get rid of that unsightly hair on your chest or back. Plastic surgery is losing its stigma among men, and the results have been tremendous. Liposuction, male breast reduction, tummy tucks, it's no secret that men want to look good too. And sometimes a simple procedure can add years to your professional life. Book your consultation and learn how cosmetic treatment can bring your inner beauty to the surface.
Call Northwest Plastic Surgery Associates today, 728-3811, or visit nwpsa.com.
Grizz Greats, the Coaching Tree Podcast, Episode 6 is out now with Pat Kennedy. Pat Kennedy was the head coach of the University of Montana for 2 seasons in 03 and 04, in between Don Holst and Larry Krastowiak. He's the one head coach since Judd Heathcote who was outside the University of Montana coaching tree, and his short tenure as head coach at the UM was largely unsuccessful, going under 500 both seasons. That said, his tenure at the University of Montana also marked a turning point for the Grizzly program. What started with great optimism and eventually led to the program giving way to Larry Krastowiak and Pat Kennedy's personal story are also very intriguing. An assistant coach to the great Jim Valvano, and a head coach to a bevy of first-round NBA picks, including Heisman Trophy winner Charlie Ward at Florida State. Our conversation with Pat Kennedy is both illuminating and highly entertaining. So check out Grizz Greats, the Coaching Tree Podcast, Episode 6, out now wherever you get your podcasts. Grizz Greats is brought to us by Blackfoot Communications, Stockman's Bar, and Berkshire Hathaway Real Estate.
ESPN Radio for Western Montana, KKVU HD3 Stevensville, and 102.9 FM on K275BS Missoula. It's 4 o'clock. Welcome to Tutel and Nuanez, Montana's only statewide sports talk show. Touchdown! Broadcast on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Western Montana and across the state on SWX Television.
I like football!
Now, sports talk from Montana for Montana. Live from the Kurtz Polaris studio, here is Ryan Tutel and Colter Nuanez.
Montana State Hall of Fame induction this evening. One of those inductees, Bobby Daly, joining us. And the eve of Cat Grizz for the second time this basketball season tomorrow from Bozeman. Can't wait for it. Hi, how are you? Ryan Tutel, Colter Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio and SWX Montana Television across the state. Thanks for letting us be with you on this very nice Friday. Hope you are having a wonderful day. Excited to be with you here. If you would like to listen live on the World Wide Web, you can do that, 1029ESPN.com. You go ahead, you get on the website, you check it out on the Listen Live tab. The stream is there all the time, and it is available thanks to Opportunity Bank, your local bank, your opportunity. If you'd like to call, you can do that as well. 329-1899, the phone number. 329-1899, that phone number. All guests join us via the Raggage Brothers RV phone line. Let's take a look at what we got in the show today. We're going to open with Colter Nuanez, who is in Bozeman, Montana, at the Universal Athletic there in Bozeman right now. If you're cruising around the city of Bozeman, if you're hanging out over there watching us on SWX, listening on the internet, drop into Universal Athletic and go say hi to Colter. He's all set up. He is there right now with Bobby Daly, so we're going to join them here in just a moment. We also are going to get in, obviously, to some basketball. The Montana State men fell last night at Portland State by 10, 87-77. The big story out of this game, Harold Frey going down with an apparent ankle injury, rolled his ankle about 2 minutes into the second half and did not return in that basketball game. Don't know his status for tomorrow, but we will get into that and the loss for Montana State, what that means, dropping them to now 8-7 on the season. Meanwhile, the Montana State winning their 10th in a row, dominating, win by almost 30 over Portland State in Bozeman last night. All of that, though, to get us set up for Cat Grizz tomorrow. We will hear from a bunch of different players, coaches involved in these basketball games tomorrow. The Lady Grizz at Bozeman against Montana State women at 2 o'clock. And then the men, they go at 7 tomorrow from Brick Breeden Fieldhouse. Coulter and I will be on hand, and hopefully many of you will be as well. So we will get into all that. There you go. That is our show outlook. And now we hopefully go to Coulter. Coulter, you down there in the Universal Athletic? How we doing over there, my man?
I can hear you loud and clear. Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, well, you don't need a microphone to hear me. I could just scream, and it just goes to Bozeman. You know, that's the way that works.
And that's why you're so good at what you do.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so you're there, Coulter, at the Universal Athletic and the Montana Football Hall of Fame, by the way, also in that Universal Athletic at Bozeman. But you are aside a guy, speaking of Hall of Fames, who's being inducted tonight into the Montana State Hall of Fame, Bobby Daly. Bobby, thanks so much for being with us. How are you?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Believe me, it's much better for you that you don't have to be face-to-face. You know what I mean? You could just hear it, and that's going to be good enough, so that's a much better situation. But when you talk about this evening and what this is for you to be back now as an assistant coach on the football team at your alma mater and now being inducted into the Hall of Fame, I mean, that's pretty cool. It's as good as it gets, right?
No doubt, no doubt. I mean, it's not something that, you go into your college career even thinking about, but as soon as you're done and you start seeing some of your peers, some of the guys you looked up to going in, and you kind of realize that it's, something that's out there that's a possibility, and, it honestly happened a little quicker than I thought, but I'm very, very happy to be a part of it now.
I was teasing Bobby beforehand. I was saying, you're making me feel old, a guy that I knew and came up with a little bit going into the Hall of Fame. But this is interesting for you because twofold. First of all, you're going with one of your good buddies, Dane Fletcher, tonight. So that experience in itself must be great to share that with Dane.
No doubt, no doubt. I mean, he's 1 year younger than me as far as grades are concerned, but we're very close in age and have been very good friends for a long time.
And then I was also teasing you. Your wife was a great athlete herself, right? But you guys didn't meet in Bozeman.
No.
So you've been telling the glorious days stories of how good of a player you might have been, and now affirmation, right? Because you could actually take it and say, babe, I actually was good, right?
Yeah.
I'm going in the Hall of Fame.
It was probably a good thing I didn't meet her while I was in college here. I don't know if it would have ended up working out the way it did, but, she is without a doubt a tremendous athlete, probably better than I ever was. I wouldn't say that if she was here. Hopefully she's not listening, but, she's a very good athlete, and she didn't really realize what type of athlete I was until we got to Bozeman, and then you just start hearing different people telling her different stories, and she's like, oh, I guess you were pretty good,
Bobby Daly joining us, who's being inducted into the Montana State Athletics Hall of Fame this evening. So fantastic accomplishment for him and a great honor. But, Bobby, what's it been like for you to be back at the university on the coaching staff and back with Jeff Choate here in the last year or two, just with the team and back walking the sidelines as a coach?
It's been great. Obviously we had a very good year, but that's just icing on the cake for me. Getting to come home, getting to give back to my alma mater is definitely something that, when I got into college coaching, I was wanting to work my way back to Bozeman in one way, shape, or form. And, again, it happened a lot quicker than I was expecting. Big shout-out to Coach Choate. Big thanks to him for bringing me back home and making me a part of this great organization. And it truly is top-to-bottom organization, starting with the athletic director, Leon, and all the way down to our coaching staff, because it is a team effort up there. And, obviously last year we kind of saw some of the fruits of that labor.
Must be an interesting experience for you, too, as a guy. You came here to play for Mike Kramer when Kramer was in the beginning/middle of his rebuild. Mm-hmm. You guys were really solid, but hadn't taken the next step yet. You go away to Idaho for 6 years and come back, and now this year the greatest season Montana State's had in 35 years. So to be a part of kind of the front end of the rebuild, and now Jeff Choate and the rebuild he's done into now taking it to the next level, that must be a wild thing for you to have such perspective.
Yeah, Kramer's big thing is, like, we want to win a home playoff game. That was, our goal as a team. And my sophomore year, we were able to accomplish that. We had Furman come up to our place. We beat them pretty handily up here, and then went down to the quarterfinals at Appalachian State and lost to the eventual national champions. But at that time, that was an absolutely huge deal. And, coming back and, hearing Coach Choate talk, it kind of brought back some of those memories about, the drive and, the goals that were set by Kramer were very similar to that of Coach Choate. But the beautiful thing about us having a great year this year is we've only set the bar higher. We were inches and inches away from, getting to that game. And, it's something that I think we've got a hunger within our team, and it's something that we want to work our way back and make it further next year.
Bobby, when it comes to kind of, I don't want to say preaching, but kind of talking to kids as you're recruiting them and even as you're coaching them about what it means to play at Montana State, especially for kids maybe who aren't from the state of Montana, having that history, how much different is it to be able to do it at your alma mater than at other places that you were coaching before? I
mean, I've lived it, so I can speak to how it is as a student athlete here in Bozeman at Montana State. I can talk about my experiences that I have here and, not, seem phony because it's something that right. I've been through, and I think it comes off as genuine to these guys who I recruit. And, it helps in recruiting that we're winning too. It makes it a lot easier. We're a more desired place to be. The support around here is incredible. Obviously, we've got funding for the stadium, bowling in that side, and just giving back to our student athletes. So things are looking up for sure.
Pretty interesting parallel too to have played for Mike Kramer, one of the most interesting people, period, that I've ever met. And
no doubt.
Anytime we need any perspective, we just call Coach Kramer, give us some history on this. And you got half an hour worth of an interview with 2 questions like always. But Jeff Choate, the way he preaches his vision, his abilities as an orator as well, they're different guys, but they're both so engaging, so interesting. So just compare and contrast the two figures that you've kind of been under at Montana State.
Yeah, they both do very well in front of a microphone, and getting into this business and being a coach, and you can you kind of set your goals as a coach, and you look at that head coaching spot as the ultimate goal, as for me at least, and you watch these guys in front of a mic and you realize, like, hey, I got a lot of work to do. These guys, they're funny, they're engaging, and there are no nerves involved, and they are built for it. So, getting these experiences, being on the radio, getting in front of a mic myself, is something that's good for me, but certainly an area that I know I need to improve in.
Now, Bobby, you played for the Big Human. Then you were just on Paul Petrino's staff at Idaho, and now you're on Jeff Choate's staff back at Montana State. Head coaches are insane people, right? That's it. That's all we need to know.
No doubt. They are wired a little bit different, man, and everything falls on their shoulders. So they understand that they have to hire well, and I think that's a credit to all 3 of those coaches. They had excellent assistant coaches, and I think part of being a great head coach is who you hire, because it's us assistant coaches who are spending the majority of time with these players, building those relationships. Not to say that they don't, but it's just we've got a lot more face time, and having good assistant coaches is a big part of being a great head coach.
Within the context of that, when you're talking about a head coach putting a staff together, obviously he wants to have the football side of it and wants to make sure you're on the same page in terms of schematics of what you want to do. But does he talk to you, like when Jeff Choate interviewed you, did he talk about the type of person that he wanted for a staff and what he needed out of you personality-wise, interaction-wise, and that sort of thing to make sure that the staff is meshing properly as well?
One of the things that I had as a conversation with Coach Choate is energy. He's all about bringing energy, bringing good energy, being high energy, and because players feed off that stuff. Football is not a game that you can play asleep, and we practice at 7 a.m. every morning. So bringing that energy to your meetings and making sure you take the field with that type of energy, your players feed on that, and that's something that he's very big on.
You know me, I ask all the questions there are to ask. The one question I never got an answer to, though, I've asked so many people, when you're the assistant head coach, which you are at Montana State, what does that actually mean? Every head coach just says, oh, he does all the stuff I don't want to do, or if I die, he's the head coach. What do you actually have to do in that role?
I consider myself like the vice president. If Coach Choate were, God forbid, die, I guess I get to be the head coach. But other than that, a little bit of roster management and stuff like that. But it's a pretty nice title for very little work, I'll be honest with you.
That's great. Well, you mentioned practicing in the morning. Jeff Choate does a lot of different things, pretty different than a lot of people. The practicing in the morning, when you guys watch fall camp, I think your guys' fall camp is one of the most entertaining things you can watch because you got 4 fields going at once. If you want to see any guy, number 1 through 99, you got a chance to see him take reps because pretty much everybody gets a shot. But just practices at Montana State, first of all, going in the morning, but also just the way that Choate tries to develop players across the roster. I just talked to us a little bit about that element.
Yeah, he's an outside-the-box thinker. So, there's a lot of old-school coaches who've seen it done one way, they've seen it work one way, and that's the way that they're going to do it. And he does a great job of thinking outside the box, So not every day is going to be the same for our players. A lot of places that you go to a Tuesday practice, you know exactly what you're going to get. You go to a Wednesday practice, you know exactly what you're going to get. He'll switch it up from week to week if he feels like it's getting stale. And I think our players like that. They don't know what they're going to expect coming into practice, so they, prepare a little bit better.
It's Tutel Nuanez, Bobby Daly joining us on the show. Coulter and Bobby live at the Universal Athletic in Bozeman ahead of Cat Grizz for the second time this season in basketball, which is tomorrow, and Bobby Daly being inducted tonight into the Montana State Athletics Hall of Fame, a tremendous honor, certainly. Bobby, how did they tell you this? In the Pro Football Hall of Fame, they do the knock on the door. That's the famous thing. They got a couple guys live on TV. But how did you find out that you were even up for this and then find out that you were going to be inducted?
It was kind of crazy. I had just gotten the job here, so it was about a year ago. I showed up in January, and I believe the ceremony was a little bit earlier in the year last year. But I went to it, and, at the ceremony, Leon kind of told me about it. And it's like, wow, so I'm going to be here next year. But about a year ago today, or give or take a couple weeks, but, yeah, I found out during the ceremony last year.
So did you immediately go to Jeff Choate and ask for a pay bump? You're like, hey, I'm a Hall of Famer now. Let's put some cash in here.
Hey, I was too early in the process. I had just gotten my my salary figured out. So had it happened a year later, that might have worked for me, but I don't think it would have last year.
Well, Bozeman itself has changed so much, even since I first moved here back in 2010. But since you were playing here, it's night and day.
Yeah.
What are some of the biggest differences you noticed? What's some of the biggest changes that are maybe advantages for you guys as a football program?
I mean, it's always kind of had Yellowstone, right? We've always had Big Sky, but for one reason or another, more and more people around the country know about Montana now. And it's kind of become, especially Bozeman in this area, has become a destination, a vacation spot. So usually when you're talking to a recruit, they can, whether they've been to Montana or not, they have somebody who's got a cabin here, or they've had parents who've been to Yellowstone, and so you can at least have a little bit of a conversation starter as far as where Montana is. It's not southern Canada, it's actually recognized as a state, and down in Southern California, sometimes you got to point it out on a map, but it's definitely changed in size. The people are a little bit different. I've been up at the ski hill lately, and we definitely have some characters around here, but it's all for the better, for sure.
When you get here to Montana State or get back to Montana State, you know that the last game of the regular season's coming around, and I know that was an enjoyable one for you. What was it like for you to be coaching in your first Cat Grizz game, especially the way that went?
The energy around that game is always awesome, but one of the things that I thought Coach Choate did an excellent job of is the preparation, the part leading up to that game. I mean, it means so much to so many people, but every day of the week we have a former Bobcat coming in and talking to our players about what they mean to them and what this program means to them, and it really just sets the stage for what this game is all about. So our guys were, cage dogs, man. We were holding them back, and obviously right from the very first snap, we were all over those guys, and it was a lot of fun to be a part of. Had a lot of people come up to me after the game and just talk about we've beat the Grizz before, but never like that, and that was it was fun to be a part of for sure.
Particularly your group too. So there's a lot of very interesting stories just within that group. You talk about a guy like Josh Hill, who honestly probably had no business even coming back from the injury he had.
Right.
And not only does he come back, he earns first-team All-League honors and was absolutely one of the best inside linebackers in the league. What a great story for him coming as a walk-on out of Kalispell. But also Troy Anderson is one of the biggest stories in the Big Sky Conference every single day because he's just such an incredible athlete. He gets first-team All-League as well, even though he's only a part-time defensive guy.
Yep.
He battled injuries too, but just walking into a group where you have guys that have such versatility but also such toughness and perseverance. Just talk about those guys.
Yeah, it's a credit to them without a doubt. I can take some credit, but I'd be lying to you. These are tremendous athletes with high character, and they've been coached, and just kind of got to let them loose and let them do their things, just point them in the right direction. Obviously, Troy, tremendous athlete, but the things that people don't know about him is, he's a great person, very intelligent kid, and just a guy that's very enjoyable to be around. He has zero ego, which is kind of hard to do when you're that type of dude. And Josh Hill, like you said, talk about passion, talk about love for the game. He had no business being out there, but, he did a very, very good job of taking care of his body and communicating with me on where he was and how he was feeling so I could, pull the reins back or let him loose throughout the year. And, he sat out all of last year, so it took him a little while to get going, but as soon as he had a few reps underneath his belt, he was playing lights-out football. Very good tackler, explosive player, making plays behind the line of scrimmage. It was a well-deserved honor for him.
Bobby Daly joining us. He and Coulter are in Bozeman right now. Coulter's already there, getting ready for the Cat Grizz game tomorrow. I'll be joining him a little later on, but they're at the Universal Athletic in Bozeman. And, Bobby, I got to ask you this because, there's more than one Daly running around in the state of Montana. Your dad, Jay, obviously your brother, a pretty good ball player in his own right. You're only ever part of whatever family you come from, but what's it like being a life in the Daly household?
It's funny that you mention us three guys because my mom and my sister, they're the forgotten ones in this big picture, but they are without a doubt the backbone of our family. So definitely want to give them a shout out. They get very few, so I get an opportunity to shout them out once in a while, so I'll do that now. But my dad he's a dad, but he was a coach for me all the way through. He coached me in basketball, coached me in baseball, coached me in football. He was very instrumental in my growth as a human and as an athlete. And then my brother, just somebody who's come a long way. He went through his trials and tribulations without a doubt, but he has matured and very proud of him. He just had a baby girl, proud father, and I'll get to see him and his daughter tonight, so very excited about that.
We'll get you out of here on this. Tonight you're going to have to get up on a stage in front of hundreds of people.
Oh, yeah.
You're broadcasting to millions right now, so there's no pressure.
But easy tonight.
Are you going short speech? You going long speech? You can tell stories? What's your angle here?
Yeah, I was thinking I was going to make sure I give thanks where thanks is due, but kind of slide some stories in about the people I'm giving thanks to, and then just kind of, at the very end, talk a little bit about what I felt separated me from, the pack, I guess, if you will. There's a lot of guys that I came in with and a lot of scholarship guys that I came in with, and obviously being a walk-on, it's an uphill battle, but I got opportunities and took advantage of those opportunities and just, outworked everybody, and that was kind of my motto.
Well, Bobby, we certainly appreciate you being here, spending some time with us. Congratulations on the induction tonight. Enjoy it. I'm sure it'll be a blast, especially once the speech is over.
Yeah.
And that's when you can enjoy yourself. Don't get out over your skis before the speech with the drinks,
Yeah,
you got to wait till after the fact. But congratulations on that, and thanks so much for being with us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Bobby Daly, boys and girls, with Coulter in Bozeman at the Universal Athletic there. We certainly appreciate him sitting down with us. We'll take a quick break. On the other side, the Montana State Bobcats men's team had a loss last night, and maybe more than that. As Harold Frey went down, we'll discuss the implications of the game against Portland State for Montana State heading into the Grizz game tomorrow next.
Hi there, it's Les Schwab Alignment and Brakes and Shocks and Wheels and Tires. Some tire places don't offer all that, but we do to help keep you safe. It's our Les Schwab Founders Celebration. Get $50 off an alignment. That's nearly half off regular price when you purchase 4 Reputation or Open Range AT tires all month long. Les Schwab Tires, doing the right thing since 1952. Limited time offer while supplies last. Cannot be combined with other offers. Details at leschwab.com.
Hey, it's Coulter, and I'm here with Catherine from The Advocates. If you've been in a car accident or need help dealing with the insurance companies, you should give The Advocates a call. They can tell you if you have a case right over the phone.
That's right. It doesn't cost anything to call, and we'd be happy to talk to you and assess your situation. You don't want to have to deal with contacting the insurance companies and setting up a claim. We can do that for you. We take the hassle out of the process, so you can just focus on getting better.
There you go, folks. If you've been injured in an accident, give The Advocates a call, 406-640-4444, or online at montanaadvocates.com. You deserve The Advocates.
College basketball madness is happening again, and there's only one place in town to catch all the games, the Desperado. Catch every buzzer beater, every Cinderella story, and every upset on the Despo's 32 TVs, while getting your fill of the best hot wings Missoula has to offer, of course. Bracket busted? The Despo's got you covered there too, with cold drinks by the pint or pitcher. The Despo is your headquarters for NCAA basketball, NHL, and NASCAR too. The Desperado Sports Tavern on South Russell, across from the Y.
Older people look at the calendar, may think about college basketball, March Madness, various things going on in the professional world, but this is an unbelievable time of year for high school sports.
In February, the competition really ratchets up in high school sports. We're headed toward the state tournaments of both basketball and wrestling, and we'll cover it all at Tutel Nuanez, 4 to 6 p.m. every single weekday on 102.9 ESPN.
That's right, covering what matters in the state of Montana. Montana's #1 sports talk radio show, Tutel Nuanez.
Hey guys, you ever heard of Magic Johnson?
Rings a bell.
One of the greatest basketball superstars of all time played for a man named Judd Heathcote at Michigan State. And guess what? Judd Heathcote started his career at the University of Montana.
Coulter, did you know that 2 former University of Montana head coaches have been head coaches in the NBA and 1 on Team USA?
Isn't that amazing?
And that's why we've created Grizz Greats, the Coaching Tree podcast. Get it wherever you get your podcast. Just search Grizz Greats.
It's a phenomenal and historic podcast series proudly presented by Blackfoot Communications and Berkshire Hathaway Real Estate.
Come up and watch spectacular ski jumping February 22nd and 23rd as Montana Snowbowl hosts the Snowbowl Cup Galande Championships. More than 20 of the country's Galande ski jumpers will be competing at Missoula's Snowbowl ski area, taking a shot at the $9,000 purse. Jumpers launch from the takeoff to a clear 90-foot platform and soar up to 200 feet down the natural hill. Fun for the whole family with food, music, and front row spectating indoors and outdoors. Learn more at montanasnowbowl.com.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon, Ryan Tutel, Coulter Nuanez. Here's a little bit of sports news for you. The Montana State basketball team fell at Portland State last night, 87-77 after going to the break up 3. MSU starting point guard Harold Frey went down with an apparent ankle injury 2 minutes into the second half, and the Vikings were able to post a 51-point second half and win by 10. The loss drops MSU to 8-7 heading into the Cat Grizz game tomorrow. The Montana State women, meanwhile, they ripped off their 10th consecutive win with a 98-67 dismantling of Portland State and Bozeman. Fallon Friggi led 4 Bobcat scorers with double figures with 19 points. MSU is now 14-1 in Big Sky play. Tomorrow, the Cats and Grizz will match up for the second and final time on the hardwood in the regular season. The Lady Grizz looking to avenge their loss at MSU from earlier this month. It was a game in which Montana led by 11 going into the fourth quarter, but then went 0 for 15 from the floor in the final period before losing by 5 in overtime. The Lady Grizz have won 3 of 4 since that game, though, and are entering tomorrow's game at 9-6 in the league. That tips off from Bozeman at 2 o'clock. And then tomorrow night, the Montana men look to continue their recent dominance in this rivalry. Travis Secure has only lost to Montana State once in his 6 seasons at Montana. They're now 12-3 in the Big Sky Conference.
The Missoula Sports Center is brought to you by Aspen Sound.
Tell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. Outstanding to be with you on this very nice Friday afternoon. We roll down into your weekend. Thanks for being here with us. We appreciate that. At Gus Tutel, at 102.9 ESPN, and at Skyline Sports MT. All the different ways, places that you can get us on Twitter. So go check that out as well. Want to take a quick moment, by the way, because it is a Friday. We usually do this off the top, but we had Bobby Daly, so we'll do it now. It's time for our Florence Coffee Company coffee break. Get yourself a little bit of espresso, perhaps some tea, maybe an iced coffee, maybe an Italian soda, which I had. Coulter, you're always drinking the iced coffees, eh?
That's right. Yeah, I even got a Floco on my way out of town. So convenient, always right next to the freeway. Good if you have an afternoon drive like I did.
You know, the thing I like about Florence Coffee is that when you're going on drive, it's a safety issue. You know, people stay safe on the highways. Drink yourself some coffee. Be alert. All of that stuff. And, hey, it's Friday. You can sleep in tomorrow, okay? You can stay up late tonight, have some fun. Get yourself a Florence Coffee Company and enjoy yourself with a little bit of Joe here on a Friday afternoon. Thanks to Florence Coffee for that. Last night, Coulter, the Montana State men went to Portland State. We know how talented Portland State can be. We know how the schedule really set up poorly for them in the first half of the season. It sets up very well for them in the second half in terms of the number of days off that they're going to be getting here down the stretch, and I think that was on display to some extent last night, but mostly this is about Harold Frey, who went down 2 minutes into the second half with an ankle injury, an apparent ankle injury, kind of a rolled ankle. It did not return in this game, and at the time, or at least at the break, Montana State was up 3. They end up having a 13-2 run against them and lose this thing by 10. I actually thought they played pretty well at times and really kind of stuck with it with Harold Frey going down, but they were not able to overcome that. And this is bad news. I mean, this is, I don't know if there's a guy, an individual player more important to his team than Harold Frey is to Montana State.
No doubt. I thought that when Harold Frey went out, a couple different thoughts. First of all, I mean, he's absolutely one of the best players in the league, so losing him is killer, but he's definitely the most important player in the league too, because the way that their roster is built, Amin Adamu can create his own shot sometimes. That's not necessarily a great thing all the time. I was watching him really closely last night. He is absolutely one of the great athletes in the league. I mean, he's a freak athlete. He goes so hard. He's such a high motor guy, but sometimes he can get a little bit out of control. That's good, though, when he's playing on the wing with a guy who's always in control. Sometimes when you put the ball in his hands and he's the guy that's dictating the pace and the tempo, well, you can play fast, but also you can be a little bit erratic. So not having Harold Frey, I think that it hurt their entire offensive pace and execution. But on the other hand, I thought without Frey, you could just really see again how great a job Danny Sprinkle has done with revitalizing and re-energizing Montana State's defensive mentality.
Right.
Portland State's really hard to guard. And it's not as if Harold Frey is this crazy ball-stopping defensive player, although he does have an incredible basketball IQ. And like you always say, Gus, in terms of his ability to anticipate and his ability to play defense off the ball, he's one of the best in the league at that, certainly. But Montana State, they gave up that big run right after Frey got hurt, and I think that that's as much just the shock of the injury to the collective team as anything else. But then they continued to play hard.
They rallied, yes.
And so to lose that game by 10, I don't know. I mean, that's one of those ones where it's a scheduled loss anyways, right? I mean, you're playing on the road at one of the harder places in the league to play on the road against a team that's finally back to full health. Although Matt Hauser, he went down in the first half, so it's kind of a trade, although Hauser's not as important to Portland State as Frey is to Montana State. But Hauser went down and he hit his head. He didn't come back. That's big going forward because Hauser has been their second scorer behind Holland Woods. But now
that was a scary fall too, man.
It was.
That Hauser hit was on the side there. That was ugly. We hope that he is well.
No doubt. And you have to feel for the kid as a grad transfer coming in from Santa Clara. He has been lights out when he's been healthy, but he busted his ankle super hard early on. He'd only played 8 conference games coming into last night, and then he goes down in the first half. But what I saw last night, we keep trying to make sense of this whole thing, the whole middle of the league after those top 3 of Montana, Eastern Washington, and Northern Colorado. And some nights it looks like it's the Cats that's number 4, but some other nights it looks like it's Southern Utah or NAU, and we can't really ever parse it together. But to me, I think that Portland State is going to be the team that everybody's going to not want to play in the Big Sky tournament. If they get fully healthy, the style they play, how erratic they can be, how erratic they can make you play, I think that they're a nightmare matchup, and I think that the Grizz would definitely agree with that as well. So I think that Portland State could be that team that, like right now they're sitting at 8-8. If they won their last 4 and got the 4 seed all by themselves, it would not surprise me one bit. But now Montana State, like I said, I think it was a scheduled loss on the docket last night. But then to lose your best player and have him be now uncertain going into the rivalry game, that's brutal. And so you hope it doesn't cause a skid down the stretch if you're the Cats. But I don't know. I think that there's a lot of different factors here that goes into this too. It's ironic, right, that if this is a plane trip, Montana State flew to Portland and they didn't fly home till this morning. It's good that they didn't fly home till this morning because Frey could get some rehab last night and ice his ankle last night. But ironically, right, if they were playing a road game that was a bus trip, he could have put his foot up the whole ride home and iced it. And even just that much of the therapy that you can do can really help you, especially if you're just going to try to, lace them up tight, warm it up good, and get rolling for the Cat Grizz game. Anybody that's ever had a sprained ankle, if you've had any sort of ligament injury and then you get on a plane, it makes the swelling go crazy. And so you worry about that part too. But I guarantee you Frey's doing everything he possibly can to get right for tomorrow. But it's definitely a bummer because it's definitely not a completely catastrophic injury in terms of it's not as if this is going to end his season or anything like that. I think he'll figure out a way to get back to playing. But if he's not at full strength, it's going to hurt the Cats. And I think that if he isn't at full strength, that will hurt Montana State's chances down the stretch as well.
Well, we will talk plenty more about this game, especially in the second hour, so we'll spend some time there. But it is worth noting that last night, Eastern Washington and Northern Colorado, again, to kind of round out who's the top 3 teams in the Big Sky along with Montana, they were both winners last night. That also brings the season total of games played in conference play to 15 along with Montana. So Montana's had this additional game that they have played this whole time. So finally, the numbers sort of align. Eastern Washington and Northern Colorado both won last night. They're both 11-4. So officially Montana just one game ahead of both of those teams with 5 to play. So that's where they stand right now. We'll hear from players and coaches, both men's and women's, in the second hour. But right now, it's a Friday, boys and girls. We're going to take a quick break, come back. Carolyn, our dear friend Carolyn, the chick who doesn't know sports, going to be with us right after this. In Western Montana, we know shopping local matters, and you may think you'd pay more for the quality and customer service that comes with it, but not at Selway Armory. Selway Armory is locally owned with knowledgeable specialists that can answer your questions. In addition to the expertise, though, Selway Armory also has a bigger selection and lower prices than the box stores. When you're in the market for firearms and accessories, save money with the experts at Selway Armory. Selway Armory, 2825 Stockyard Road, Unit E6, and online at selwayarmory.com.
At Opportunity Bank of Montana, we know that checking accounts are not one size fits all. Let us introduce you to Opportunity Bank's full suite of checking account products, including personal and business options with no minimum balance and no monthly service fee. Or if earning cash back suits you, Opportunity Reward Checking may be the perfect fit. Need to earn interest? We have those options too. Call or come into Opportunity Bank for a checking account that fits you. Opportunity Bank of Montana, serving Montanans since 1922. Member FDIC.
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable with. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today, 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
Grizz Grace, the Coaching Tree Podcast, Episode 6 is out now with Pat Kennedy. Pat Kennedy was the head coach of the University of Montana for 2 seasons in 03 and 04 in between Don Holst and Larry Krastoviak. He's the one head coach since Judd Heathcote who was outside the University of Montana coaching tree, and his short tenure as head coach at the UM was largely unsuccessful, going under 500 both seasons. That said, his tenure at the University of Montana also marked a turning point for the Grizzly program. What started with great optimism and eventually led to the program giving way to Larry Krastoviak and Pat Kennedy's personal story are also very intriguing. An assistant coach to the great Jim Valvano, and a head coach to a bevy of first-round NBA picks, including Heisman Trophy winner Charlie Ward at Florida State. Our conversation with Pat Kennedy is both illuminating and highly entertaining. So check out Grizz Greats The Coaching Tree podcast, episode 6. Out now wherever you get your podcasts. Grizz Greats is brought to us by Blackfoot Communications, Stockman's Bar, and Berkshire Hathaway Real Estate.
Hey, it's Carolyn, the chick who doesn't know about sports. Tune into my weekly segment on Fridays where we talk about, well, I don't really know what we talk about. Sometimes it's sports, sometimes it's athletes. It's usually gossip, but it's always funny.
The Chick Who Doesn't Know About Sports is brought to you each week by the Iron Grizz. The Iron Grizz is hosting weekly wine tastings each Wednesday beginning at 6 p.m. So tune into Tutel Nuanez each Friday to listen to Carolyn.
That's me.
The Chick Who Doesn't Know About Sports. Presented each week by the Iron Grizz next to the University of Montana Golf Course.
Tutel and Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Missoula.
Welcome back to Tutel and Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. We will have Carolyn, the chick who doesn't know sports, here in just a moment. But Coulter right now in Bozeman, Montana at the Universal Athletic. He's getting ready for Cat Grizz a little bit early over there tomorrow. And Coulter there at the Universal Athletic, both in Bozeman and around the state. Anything Cat Grizz you want, you go there, you get it.
Absolutely. I'm surrounded by gear on every single side of me. A lot of times you can plan ahead. They always have the Pack the Place in Pink game, whether it's during football season or basketball season. I got some Pack the Place in Pink fleeces right behind me. I got Bobcat shirts and hats right in front of me. And there's also Grizz stuff here and in Universal Athletic around the state of Montana as well. And also, although it is February, I know a lot of different baseball and softball teams are going to start training here pretty good as well. So if you need anything for your diamond sports, whether it's baseball or softball, you need a glove, a bat, a helmet, Universal Athletic has you covered as well. Just go to universalathletic.com to order anything online or to find locations in your area.
Very good. Boys and girls, it's Friday. Thank heavens. You know what that means? The chick who doesn't know sports is at it again. Carolyn, hello. How are you? What's your name?
It's Carolyn. Carolyn.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you and Stefan Diggs. Anyhow, that's from yesterday. Don't worry. That's an inside joke.
Right.
Thanks for listening to our show, which
You're
you
welcome.
make an appearance on every week.
I do listen.
What's going on, Carolyn? What do you got? You join us every Friday, talk to us about the world of sports, which you know very little. I haven't heard very much about Midnight Real Estate in Hollywood or whatever that show. Is that show gone by the wayside?
I think it did not get a second season.
I can't believe it didn't garner the viewership. Okay, talk to us today. What do you got?
I have some really big news.
Oh, boy.
Last weekend, I went to Calgary.
Yes.
And
Canada.
Calgary Flames were playing the Chicago Blackhawks.
Do you know how they came up with the name for Canada?
For the Calgary Flames?
No, just for the country.
Canada? Oh, I can't wait to hear.
They pulled letters out of a hat. C-A-N-A-D-A.
I don't know why that joke... I don't know why.
Coulter loves it.
I don't know why that joke always gets me. I'm always like, how?
Because you're Canadian.
Are you saying Canadians are dumb?
No, eh?
Oh, eh?
So you know me a little bit now.
Mm-hmm.
I've been informed that of all the places I've never been, that Calgary would be my favorite place. Is that true?
Yeah, I think Calgary is awesome. I had so much fun.
People have told me it's like it's very Montana-esque while
is.
also being
A city.
A city.
Yes, and you can walk a boot.
It's actually, I mean,
it's freezing cold, right?
I mean,
that's right up my alley.
it's no colder than Montana.
Well, that's like
Yeah.
Ryan and I
It's
always
cold,
say.
though.
Like
Yeah.
we were sitting at the Evero bar having a hamburger the other day, and they have the constant stream of the beach. And Ryan said, "Would you rather be there or here?" I said, "Here, no question."
Oh, I'd rather be.
And he said, "This is why we're best friends.
That's right.
Because we don't want to go to the beach and melt."
And this is why we're not friends with you, Carolyn. That's why we only let you in here, because you want to go to the beach. Calgary, though,
Yes.
is it. I was not prepared for truly how big it is. I mean, I know it's a major city. It's got it's got a professional hockey team. I know it's big, but it is a giant, beautiful, skyscraper-laden downtown area. And I spent a little bit of time, not a lot of time, but very much enjoyed my time in Calgary. I would like to go to the Stampede. But in any case, you were there
I was there.
this last week.
I wasn't planning to go to this hockey game.
To the flight. Who were they playing? Calgary and who?
Chicago Blackhawks. It was like a Sophie's Choice
Whoa.
situation.
Wow.
I didn't know what to do. I was beside myself.
Okay.
But in true mom form, I cheered for everybody.
Okay.
So
Good for you.
let me tell you a little something about how polite Canada is.
Yes.
We walk into the stadium. They'd already sang "Oh Canada." They sang the Star Spangled. No, not the Star Spangled Banner. You don't sing that, right?
Yes, you do.
Oh, yeah, you do sing the national anthem.
Oh my goodness!
I was thinking of something else. Anyway.
It's okay. You're Canadian. You shouldn't know the name of the national anthem.
Oh, can we cut that?
No.
Okay. And then my brother and I had to get our drinks, so we were a little bit late walking
How much
in.
is a beer at the Calgary?
Oh my
game?
God, I don't know, but a glass of wine was $15.
$15
Canadian.
Wow. So $14.95 American.
Yeah. Oh, and they
It's
only
like the save right now,
that's
right?
why I mean,
no 75 cents.
Is it
Okay.
75
Yeah.
cents on a dollar?
Yeah.
Okay.
They only served Budweiser at the stadium, which had my brother very angry because
No Molson?
No.
No Kokanee?
No Labatt's.
Oh,
Yeah.
crushing.
So that was frustrating, but
Well, that's like the corporate takeover in a nutshell
That's what
right
I
there.
said.
How do they not have the Canadian beers in
know.
Canada?
I mean, isn't Hockey Night in Canada sponsored by one, whether it's Molson or
I
whoever?
think so.
I mean, they purchased the event, the whole thing. Now, I'm not saying this was the Hockey Night in Canada game, but I mean, my goodness.
That seems like bad
it was not
distribution.
Great. It was
Okay,
not great.
so you get
anyway,
your drinks.
So we get our drinks. We walk up. We thought we got decent seats. We didn't, but that's not the point. The guy, the usher, says you can't go up the stairs while the game's in play.
Oh, yeah. You have to
So we
wait.
waited. I thought that
Yeah.
was really nice.
So that was right at the beginning, so you weren't even there for the opening puck drop? Is that what you're saying?
We weren't, but we were there like within 30 seconds of the puck drop. The Blackhawks scored a goal.
Who won the game?
The Blackhawks.
What was the score?
Like 8-2 or something.
8-2. That's
it was
lot
a
of
pretty
goals.
big shutout.
Well,
That's a lot of-
It was
that's
maybe
certainly
more than
not
2.
a shutout.
Well,
Still,
it was
8
to me.
goals is a lot. If you see 10 goals, I think I've been to like 5 NHL games. I don't think I've seen 10 goals total.
Yeah, I mean,
a lot of goals.
8. If that is a lot of goals.
It was like 8. I swore it was like 8-2.
Okay,
but it might
we're
have been
not saying
more
it wasn't.
because every time Calgary scored, they like do this huge explosion, and
Yeah.
it's just a whole
Was
thing.
it startling when they turned the whole place red and the red lights come on?
I
Everything's
loved it.
drenched in- You
Yeah.
weren't afraid. You weren't like, do we need to go out? Is this a warning?
Well, it's funny you say that because there was also this like mascot banging on something.
I probably called a drum, I would bet.
Well, yeah, I think it was a drum, but it sounded like gunshots. And I said to my brother, if we were in America, we'd be freaking out.
No doubt.
So, so we enjoyed not freaking out over those things.
Well, I'm glad you got to go to a Calgary, Chicago NHL hockey
Was
game.
that your first NHL game?
I was wondering that myself, but no, I did go to an NHL game in 1998 in Phoenix.
Wow. Okay. Oh, yeah, right. You said this. You told
Yeah.
me this off air. Yeah.
But
when you were going to
but
school in Flagstaff.
Yes. So went down to Phoenix for a game, just really to drink beer. But
You were wondering this yourself, like you were.
She was in college.
I just couldn't remember
It's
if
a
I'd
long
been to
drive from Flagstaff to Phoenix. NHL game?
Yes, I have. I watched my guy, the grade 8, Alex Ovechkin, put 2 home against the Philadelphia Flyers in Philadelphia in a 5-2 victory.
I watched Jerome McGinley score his 600th career goal for the Avalanche against the Flames.
His old team. Wow, how about that?
Sat right on the glass. That's actually one of the best live pro sports moments I've had in my life.
I saw Gary Payton score the bucket that made him the highest score in Sonics history.
In Seattle.
In Seattle.
Wow.
Yeah.
I saw Gary Payton play for 3 seconds in Missoula one time.
Oh, yeah. Right. When he came in town.
I saw the Chicago Blackhawks score 8 goals against
That's
Calgary.
Outstanding. Phenomenal.
Also, just really cute.
Shout out Derek Ryan, friend of the show. Came
Yeah.
on here, was very good about it. We appreciated him.
I was
being
hoping, I was trying to get backstage and say hi, but
here. Yeah,
didn't work out.
backstage. Yeah, that's what they have at sporting events, backstage.
So,
what else?
really quick about
yes.
on the ice, they had the Calgary Flames 40 years. It's their anniversary this year.
Yes.
And my brother and I realized that when 40 years ago, both of my brothers had original Calgary Flames kids jerseys, and I have a picture of it on my Facebook
Wonderful.
profile pic.
Are you asking people to go friend you?
No, I'm not. Please don't. But I just thought it was cute.
It's full circle in some
Yeah.
way that you're back here at a Flames game and
Yeah.
you have this cute kids pic with your brothers all in
Yeah.
Flames gear from year one.
From year one.
Outstanding.
It was pretty fun.
Carolyn, what else you got?
Well, the funny thing about Canada is anywhere you go, there's hockey on the television. Everywhere.
Yes.
We were anywhere we went, there was hockey. However, one bar had hockey, but they also had that basketball game, the All-Star game.
Yes.
And I'm just curious. I feel like I stumped Coulter with this question yesterday, and I want to know if you know.
Okay.
When did they stop making it East-West and have team captains?
Oh, it's
3 years ago.
3 years, yeah.
Why?
Because they wanted to have team captains. They thought it would be more interesting for the guys who get the most votes. So it's like a
popularity
fan.
contest?
It's a popularity. It's 100%. Be the captains, and then they get to pick their teams.
Okay.
So it's just for fun.
Just for fun.
But that All-Star game was an all-timer. I mean, that was as good as it gets.
It's
I
for
didn't-
fun
I
and for
didn't really
publicity too, right? Because it's like it's very much
Oh, it is.
it's very much a hierarchy of the players in the league, and also just a. I mean, the NBA is very dramatic.
Yeah.
NBA guys are very dramatic.
Yes.
And
So you pick Anthony Davis because you're on his team and you want to have,
So
you
there's
want
a
to
lot
be
of
buddies
politics.
about it and everything, and then maybe you're trying to say, hey, next year you're a free agent, you should come play with us, so I'm going to pick you. And
Interesting.
That-
and it's like you have at this moment you have Giannis and you have LeBron.
Not Giannis. That was
not,
wrong.
Not Giannis.
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 Got it.
But then when Kevin Durant's healthy, he's the only other guy that compares to them. So then the power move is who picks him first. And then after that, you have like 10 guys that are kind of even, so then you're kind of just making your team. I don't know. I think it's fun.
I think it's fun too, yeah. But that's the answer to your question.
I don't know why. They don't televise the selections, though, still, right?
I don't think so, although they might have, and I might have just
My
missed
God,
it.
why don't they have an All-Star game draft?
I mean,
That would be amazing.
they do, but that, like on
No.
TV would be. I mean, I think I know what you're saying though. They should
Yeah.
televise it. I mean, it would be
the
great
first year
television.
they didn't do it, and I think it's because the guys didn't want it televised because they didn't want the situation. This is true of showing the people who got picked last of the pool.
I mean,
they wanted they wanted
and who went before
to just
who.
reveal the teams. These are who are on our teams. This is who's
Well,
on this team.
I think that's total crap because I had to survive that all through middle school, being picked last. I think these guys can handle it.
Well, it must have been nice to get picked at all. I was in Canada for the Vancouver Olympic Games.
Oh, you were.
I went to Vancouver, British Columbia.
Do you ever get sad that you're not a worldly person anymore?
Well, yes.
He was just in the Philippines for like a month.
I know, but this guy used to be like the world's greatest traveler.
Oh.
He's been everywhere in the world with no job. It's phenomenal.
You can do a lot of things with no job. In fact, you need to have no job and to do
Exactly. I've been nowhere except Canada
and sales meetings.
and sales
It's
meetings.
amazing I needed a job to get mountains of debt. We
should just end right there because that's as good as it gets.
I went to Vancouver, Canada for the Olympics. And in that Olympic Games 2002, Canada won curling. They won the gold medal in curling.
Of course they did.
So we were there the day that they won the curling thing. Now, on Vancouver Island, it is, it's standing room only, absolutely everywhere, inside, outside, doesn't matter, okay? We found a bar that actually had a table for 4 of us, and we said, well, this is it. We're going to be here for 5 hours because you can't,
Right.
whatever. So we went in there, we sit there. We knew that Canada had won the gold medal already. They immediately put on the full unabridged replay. Now a full curling match takes some 90 minutes, 2 hours, whatever, at the Olympic level. Tina, my wife, who is enjoying herself thoroughly, okay, at the point where now we know that this is the last stone to throw that's going to clinch the gold for Canada, and we know that roughly 80% of the patrons in this place don't know this. I think most people believe this to be happening in real time because they had been out and about and whatnot.
Oot and a boot. Say it Canadian.
The stone is thrown, spun, whatever. Canada wins the gold medal, and Tina jumps up on the table. Go Canada! Because she wants to be a Canadian in Canada today. And the entire bar, hundreds of people erupting in cheers, people grabbing her, carrying her on their shoulders, screaming, and I'm howling with laughter and delight that they've got no idea, A, that we're, from the United States, and B, that we know nothing about this except that we had this inside deal, and now we're all thrilled about a curling match that has taken place. It was wonderful.
That's why I love the Olympics.
That's why I love Canada.
You heard about the new curling team? The United States curling team?
No.
That includes Jared Allen, Michael Roos, two Big Sky Conference alums, by the way. Jared Allen from Idaho State, Michael Roos from Eastern Washington, both also former All-Pro NFL players, as well as their reserve is Keith Bullock, All-Pro linebacker for the Tennessee Titans.
This is real?
In their very first curling match, they qualified for the U.S. National Championships, and they are among the favorites to be the U.S. representatives in curling.
Please let this happen.
That's hilarious.
We're going to talk a lot more about it. We don't have time
We
now.
do not have time, but I knew you would love this.
You've made my entire week.
And if this is the inside track, we need to get Jared Allen on the show. I think that I will retire the day after because Jared Allen is probably my favorite athlete that's ever lived.
Have you seen Jared Allen spear hunting out of a tree?
Jared Allen is he's everything you'd ever want from someone that grew up in Idaho and then played defensive end at the highest level in the NFL.
For the Minnesota Vikings, that's true. This has been Chick Who Doesn't Know Sports with our friend Carolyn. It is brought to us by our friends at the Iron Grizz. They're doing wine tastings every Wednesday at the Iron Grizz. Spectacular. This most recent one, several people I know were there. Packed house and enjoyed it very much. Colter, tell them about it.
Wines from all around the world. You can go to irongrizz.com to check in. But each Wednesday from 6 to 8 p.m., you're going to get between 5 and 7 pours, and they're pretty healthy. So you're going to be doing just fine.
You're going to do a lot better than you do at a Calgary Flames game.
$15.
It's $15 per wine tasting as well. Right. It's just a much better deal than the Calgary Flames game.
Way better. I'm in.
But you get to sample wines all evening. This Wednesday, they're going to have wine and cheese pairings, so you can pair a variety of wines with cheese. If you call us right now, 329-1899, we got a voucher for 2 people. And if you don't win, you should still go check it out. $15 a head. You don't need reservations, and you get to sample delicious wines from across the globe.
The Iron Grizz is on South Avenue. It's right there adjacent to the University Golf Course, and they are just doing spectacular work both on the food and beverage side. And wine tastings, people, this is, if you're a dope like me, you need to have them side by side so you can understand what you like, what's good, why it's good, and then the cheeses, I'm just sitting there with a loaf of Velveeta and a box of white wine going, well, is this how it works? So this is where you go to learn something about this, to get a little cultured,
Family friendly as well. It's right at the base of Mount Sentinel, so this time of year, beautiful setting because you can look out over the golf course with the snow up onto the mountain. There's a fire outside. There's a s'more pit. Lots of room for the kids to run around.
Love it.
And the food is excellent as well. So go to the Iron Grizz, 515 South Avenue West. Wednesday wine tastings from 6 to 8 p.m., $15 a head.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you.
Cat Grizz. Tomorrow, a full hour of setup next.
Seafood lovers, it's time to get cracking at the Montana Club's annual Lobster Fest. Feast on one of our 19 mouth-watering lobster dishes, live Maine lobster, succulent lobster tail, and tantalizing one-of-a-kind lobster specialties. 3 big days, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, March 5th through the 7th. It only happens once a year. Don't miss it. See the menu at montanaclub.com. The Montana Club's Lobster Fest on Brooks and North Reserve, Missoula.
Come into your local Fred's Appliance and see the full line of Bosch kitchen appliances.
Get hassle-free instant rebates up to $1,500 on Bosch kitchen packages.
See the new line of Bosch dishwashers at Fred's. Loaded with new features, you'll see why Bosch dishwashers are consistently top-rated.
Adjustable racks, including a third rack, and the quietest dishwashers on the market are some of the reasons people love their Bosch dishwasher.
The new Bosch French door refrigerator has features only found on refrigerators costing twice as much. Get up to a $1,500 instant rebate on Bosch packages. This is your chance to save big on new Bosch appliances. Bosch is known for quality, and at Fred's, we're proud of the huge selection of major appliances we have in stock and ready for pickup or delivery.
Need to finance? No problem. Pay no interest when paid in 12 months at Fred's Appliance. Fred's is always open Sunday, so we're there when you need us.
Fred's Appliance, 93 South, 5 minutes south of Brooks and Reserve.
Fred's Appliance. We sell appliances. Only appliances.
Hey Gus, you ever heard of Magic Johnson?
Rings a bell.
One of the greatest basketball superstars of all time played for a man named Judd Heathcote at Michigan State. And guess what? Judd Heathcote started his career at the University of Montana.
Coulter, did you know that 2 former University of Montana head coaches have been head coaches in the NBA and 1 on Team USA?
Isn't that amazing?
And that's why we've created Grizz Greats, the Coaching Tree podcast. Get it wherever you get your podcast. Just search Grizz Greats.
It's a phenomenal and historic podcast series proudly presented by Blackfoot Communications and Berkshire Hathaway Real Estate.
The Missoulian Angler would like to announce a fundraiser on Saturday, April 4th at 4 p.m. for Trout Unlimited's Upper Clark Fork restoration projects, and they're asking you to help launch their first annual Clark Fork Squala Fest with a bang. The event at the Missoulian Angler Fly Shop is dedicated to help improve fish populations and habitat in the Upper Clark Fork River watershed. Trout Unlimited's plan is a multi-pronged program that focuses on protecting and restoring cold, clean water and habitat to the river and its tributaries. Fish on, Montana.
If you are hurt or disabled, you may be entitled to benefits from an insurance company or Social Security. I'm Chris Helmer, an attorney at Clark Fork Law Offices. Our Missoula firm specializes in worker compensation, personal injury, and Social Security disability. There are many unknowns when injured or disabled. The other side is fighting hard. You should too. Call Clark Fork Law at 728-0168 for a free consultation or visit clarkforklaw.com. Again, 728-0168.
ESPN Radio for Western Montana, KKVU HD3 Stevensville, and 102.9 FM on K275BS Missoula. ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon. Ryan Tutel, Colton Nuanez. Here's some sports news for you. The Montana State men's basketball team fell at Portland State last night, 87-77. After going to the break up 3, MSU starting point guard Harold Fred went down with an apparent ankle injury 2 minutes into the second half, and the Vikings were able to post 51 points in the second stanza to win by 10. That loss drops MSU to 8-7 heading into the Cat-Grizz game tomorrow. The Montana State women, meanwhile, ripped off their 10th consecutive win, a 98-67 dismantling of Portland State in Bozeman. Fallon Frigge led 4 Bobcat players in double figures with 19 points. MSU is now 14-1 in conference play. Tomorrow, the Cats and Grizz will match up for the second and final time on the hardwood in the regular season. The Lady Grizz will be looking to avenge their loss to Montana State from earlier this month. It was a game in which Montana led by 11 heading into the fourth quarter, but went 0 of 15 from the field in the final period before losing by 5 in overtime. The Lady Grizz, though, have won 3 of 4 since that game and entered tomorrow's contest at 9-6 in league play. Tip-off from Bozeman is at 2 o'clock. The men, on the other hand, will, for the Montana Grizzlies, look to continue their recent dominance of the rivalry. Now in his 6th season, Travis DeCuire has only lost once to Montana State. The Grizz beat the Cats by 14 in Missoula in the first matchup and are currently 12-3, a game up on Northern Colorado and Eastern.
This ESPN Sports Center is presented by Clark Fork Law. Now from the Kurtz Polaris studio, here is Ryan Tutel and Coulter Nuanez.
Welcome back, boys and girls, and welcome to hour number 2, which means it's after 5, which means it is your weekend. Welcome to it. Thanks for letting us be on board with you here in the second hour of Tutel and Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television across the great state. If you would like to find us on the World Wide Web, you can do just that, 1029ESPN.com. Listen live on the Listen Live tab. It's there all the time. Thanks to Opportunity Bank, your local bank, your opportunity. If you'd like to pick up your phone and call, you get yourself in here, 329-1899, 329-1899. All guests join us via the Rankage Brothers RV phone line. If you missed anything in the first hour of the show, including our conversation with Bobby Daly, who is about, 2 hours from officially becoming a Montana State Hall of Famer, you go ahead and check it out on the podcast. The podcast available wherever you get your podcasts, available all the time, thanks to Blackfoot Communications as well as the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel. If you're wondering if you're watching us on the television or perhaps on our YouTube channel, phenomenal YouTube channel, go check out the Tutel and Nuanez YouTube channel and you see only me, first of all, you're welcome. I mean, that's pretty ideal. Also, it's because Coulter is already in Bozeman for the games tomorrow. Cat Grizz, second time around. He is at the Universal Athletic there in Bozeman doing a show. Coulter, take us through it. How's it looking over there in Bozetown right now?
Well, if you haven't been to this Universal Athletic on 7th Street, it's the Universal Athletic headquarters. So the Universal Athletic stores across the state are beautiful. Definitely go-to spot whether you need shoes, hats, gear of any sort. But this one is particularly beautiful. You've been here before, Gus. It's nice. It's very, very nice. Tons and tons of inventory. So whether you need the new line of baseball caps because spring training is on the horizon, or
that's right, it's right here,
or you yourself are a baseball or softball player, you got kiddos getting ready for that. They really make a big push with a bunch of sales on all the stuff like bats, balls, gloves. They got this cool thing over here in the corner. It's called the glove steamer, so you can put your leather mitt in there and it helps you form it so you can get that perfect.
My goodness, where's that been my whole life? I was sitting there trying to work that thing back and forth for 100 years.
Right. I mean, you remember you used to have to wrap it up in rubber bands, put all the oil all over it. It was quite the task for sure. But Universal Athletic on 7th Street here in Bozeman, or at the Tremper Shopping Center in Missoula, or you go to universalathletic.com as well, and you can buy anything online, or you can find locations around the state of Montana. They're proud sponsors of athletics across the Treasure State.
Well, Coulter, it's great for you to be there. I will be joining you tomorrow, and you and I are going to be in the Brick Breeden Fieldhouse for a good portion of the day tomorrow for the women's basketball game at 2 o'clock and then the men's game at 7. Now, let's talk about this men's matchup, which all of a sudden takes on a very different light tomorrow with the questionability. And I mean, look, I'm no doctor or whatever, but I mean, if you roll your ankle and it's like that, sometimes maybe it's not as bad. I mean, we talked earlier in this year, I think Eddie Egan went down with what looked like a bad ankle injury for the Grizzlies, really rolled it, needed help getting off of the floor. I mean, was using his teammates kind of as crutches. And as it turned out, he did not return, but he could have. In fact, they were getting him ready to go, wrapping that thing up, putting the shoe back on, because if you remember, that was the game. There was like 55 fouls called. Everybody was fouling out of that game, and they were down to like 2 guys left on the bench that were available. So sometimes it's like that where it looks really bad, and then maybe you could go on it, and so hopefully Harold Frey can turn it around. Or maybe it's bad and you're out for some time. And by the way, the Grizzlies also, are questionable with Timmy Falls. We don't know what his status will be for tomorrow. But when you talk about the importance to their team and what they're trying to do, I mean, Harold Frey is the key to everything for MSU.
And this is the little things you don't think about when you talk about home and away. We talked about it a little bit in the first hour. But when Timmy Falls busted his ankle on last Saturday, he was then on the bench, wrapped in ice, putting it in the ice bucket, and then he probably went home and put his feet up. And that's just so much different than having to ride a bus back to the hotel, stay in the hotel last night. You don't have the training room. You have your trainers there that can help you a little bit, but they don't have hardly any of the same gear. Then you got to go to the airport, limp through the airport, then you got to ride on a plane. That's going to make the swelling go up. So to me, I mean, I've rolled my ankle so many times playing hoops, and it's that first 24 to 36 hours where you got to reduce the swelling, and if you can, then a lot of times you can get it loosened up, get the blood flowing, and lace the shoes up tight, and then, especially since this is a Saturday game, then you'll have 4 or 5 days after that to rehab. But just the difference between home and away, Harold Frey could have gone to the training room right away and gone to rehab right away and then got up this morning and done the same thing, but because he wasn't here in Bozeman, I think it sets you back a little bit. That said, he's a senior that's got 5 regular season games left in his career and only 1 Bobcat Grizz game left in his career. Regardless of how bad it is, I don't think it's broken. He was walking around on the sidelines last night before they finally made him sit down to ice. You could see it on the Pluto TV. I would be shocked if he didn't play tomorrow. I think that no matter what, I think he's going to play tomorrow. But, I think it's apples to oranges when you talk about the impact on the teams, obviously. Timmy Falls is a central player for Montana, but not the star that Harold Frey is. But you do have 2 guys that were probably expected to match up against each other, both questionable going into this game.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big, big impact, and we won't know until, they tip it off, who's, available or whatever, how that's going to go, and we'll see, we'll watch in warm-ups and see, what it looks like for both of those players, but hopefully, everybody can be full goal, especially with, you feel for a guy like Harold Frey in his last, potential matchup, certainly his last matchup of the regular season with the Grizzlies, and it's going to be a big, fun environment. I mean, no matter what, guys love playing in this game, no matter how it goes. After it's over, if it goes against you, then you doesn't feel so good. But when you talk about 7,000 people, the environment that it is, the excitement that surrounds it, this is a game you want to be up for. So hopefully he will be able to be that. Colter, when you take a look at Montana State, though, coming out of that game last night, you talked when we, looked at this game and the 10-point loss for MSU, but yet when they rallied, with Harold Frey having gone down and really hung in that game against a good Portland State team. We know that, in this rivalry, Coach DeCure is 10 of 11 at this point in the regular season against Montana State. And certainly the Grizzlies, as the number 1 team in the Big Sky Conference, are going to be favored in every game they play from here on out, and including this one tomorrow. What do you think this looks like, though, if Harold Frey can't go for Montana State? Because to me, it looks pretty bleak for the Bobcats.
I mean, unfortunately for all the Bobcat followers listening to this show, I think it looks pretty bleak for the Bobcats either way. I think that the Grizz are playing with an extreme amount of confidence right now. I went to practice twice this week, and these guys are locked in. I think that the Grizz 3 seniors, Kendall Manuel, Jared Samuelson, and Saeed Pridgett, they can see that the end is near, and rather than dreading that, they're embracing it. I know we're going to hear from Saeed Pridgett here in a minute, but he's really just trying to soak this thing in. And I think that Montana, there's so much hype that goes into every version of the Cat Grizz game, whether you're talking about football, basketball, even track and field, especially during the outdoor season. And I think a lot of times that hype can then make added pressure and make guys have some nerves. And we always talk to the football coaches, regardless of what the records are, settling into the game during the football clash of these 2 rivals, it's one of the key moments. Like who settles in first? Who rides the momentum like the Bobcats did this year? But the Bobcats seized the momentum on the very first play of the game and then rode it all the way to the end in the football game this year. There's almost no pressure associated with that with this basketball rivalry on the men's side right now. I do think there's a lot of pressure going into the girls' game, even though Montana State has won 8 out of the last 10. I think there's a lot of pressure because it's been so atypical for the Lady Grizz to be on the wrong side of this rivalry. Losing 8 out of 10, they're still up in the rivalry, I think 79-30, even with having reeled off of 8 out of 10. So I do think there's a lot of pressure there just because Shannon Schwann's in a contract year, and the Lady Grizz just have so much history. But at this moment, when you are just gauging body language and you're gauging the way guys are acting and talking and operating, to me, you could feel that the Grizz were sort of up when it was Portland State on the horizon a couple weeks back. They were definitely up when they knew Weber was coming to town, and they had a chance to get Weber State back after losing to them in overtime. They were certainly up for both the Eastern Washington games. I don't even know if they need to be up for this Bobcat Grizz game, and that's I think sort of a referendum on the state of the rivalry as well as the gap between the 2 programs right now. But these Montana players, especially because 2 of their seniors, Manuel and Samuelson, are both from Montana, I think that they know that this is their last go-round in this rivalry, but also I think they don't feel a lot of pressure going into it because I think that they have the utmost confidence because they've had so much success in this rivalry game over the last 4 years.
No, I agree. I mean, I don't think there is a lot of nerves. I think there's a lot of expectation on the part of the Montana Grizzlies. And for the Bobcats, look, outside of Harold Frey and maybe decay a little bit. There's not a lot of guys who have a ton of experience in this rivalry. So, I mean, they already played the one in Missoula, of course, but I think these guys are still trying to, get used to it. I don't think there's a ton of nerves for Montana State particularly either.
Totally.
But I don't know what the expectation is that those players have that they have going into this game.
And that's an interesting thing, too, because I do think that the last couple years the Cats have felt a ton of pressure because Tyler Hall had his virtuoso, legendary performance in Bozeman during his sophomore year where he went 11 of 13 from the floor. He hit 7 threes, scored 37 points, and Montana State won. And at that moment, it was kind of like this breakthrough because Brian Fish and Travis DeCuire had each got into their respective schools the same year, and that was the fourth Cat Grizz game between those two head coaches, and Fish got himself one. And so now you're thinking, okay, it's 3-1, but the Cats have some momentum. Tyler Hall's only a sophomore. Harold Fraser only a freshman. So Montana State, maybe they can turn the tide in this thing. Well, then Montana reassumed control fully by posting convincing win after convincing win each of the last 4 matchups. But on the Montana State side of things, I do agree with you. I think that there's pressure on Harold Frey, certainly. I think there's pressure on Danny Sprinkle because I think this means a lot to him. But the rest of the Bobcat guys, I mean, this is just a game where there's going to be a great crowd at home, and they're just going to experience it for the first time. They have so many new players. Side note here, one guy we haven't talked about, we've talked about Jabril Bello a lot. We've talked about Devin Kirby a lot. We've talked about Amin Adamu a lot as far as Montana State's role players. We've hardly mentioned Borja Fernandez. I think he has had one of the most surprising second halves to his freshman year of anybody. I remember watching him in Missoula less than a month ago when he was guarding Saeed Pridgett one-on-one, and at first you're like, man, this kid's going to get eaten alive. And make no mistake, Pridgett scored 4 buckets on him for sure. But the kid can hold his ground defensively. He's stout and he's strong.
Big. Yeah, he's giant, yeah.
He's really big. He's really stout. He's got great lower body build and lower body strength. But he's also not scared at all. I mean, the confidence he was playing with last night, I think he finished with 15 or 17 points last night. And he is the type of player that I've always thought Montana State should build their program upon. Brad Hughes and Brian Fish had the same philosophies. They wanted to mine the junior colleges, and they wanted to be a hyper-athletic, high-scoring, West Coast-style program. I've always thought Montana State should build their men's basketball program with their pipeline coming from the Midwest, not the West Coast. They should build it based on skill and acumen and stuff like that rather than getting a bunch of really freaky athletic junior college guys and trying to just run and gun. Because the variability of that is so inconsistent, and the fit academically that you're going to find for those kids at a STEM school like Montana State is just not that ideal. Whereas you can go get a bunch of high academic achievers that maybe want to be engineers from the Midwest. And to me, Montana State has tried to be like, what's a good example? They've tried to be just a West Coast school, but they should try to be South Dakota State light, right? They should try to be a team that builds it from Minneapolis and Wisconsin and Iowa, Illinois, that area, rather than the other way around. And I think that Harold Frey has obviously been a big hit in terms of getting a recruiting guy internationally. But Borja Fernandez, that's the type of guy that I think they should get. Their associate head coach, Chris Haslam, was the head coach of the U20 team in the United Kingdom for a long time. But he also went to Wyoming. So shout out to David, former Poke. But Haslam's done a great job of always going overseas during the summers and scouting the U20 FIBA championships. That's where they found Harold Frey back when he was only 16 years old, still on the national team for Norway. But that's where they got Borja Fernandez. That's where they got Finn Flutie. So they got a bunch of international guys. I think that's a great thing because of the way that Bozeman has evolved. I think those international kids can really fit here in the Gallatin Valley. But regardless, back to the point of what you asked me, there's so many new guys on this Montana State roster. So in terms of the history of the rivalry, having lost 19 out of 20 to the Grizz, or 18 out of 19, could be 19 out of 20 after tomorrow, I don't really think that plays into a lot of these guys' psyches, and so that actually might be one of the things Montana State can use as an advantage.
Yeah, no question. I think you're right about that. It's Tutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. Ryan Tutel with you from Missoula. Colton Nuanez with you from Bozeman. He's there at the Universal Athletics, so we appreciate them housing him over there for that. And then I'll be traveling over the hill tomorrow. Looking forward to it. Can't wait to be back in Bozeman and there for this basketball game, both basketball games tomorrow. Let's hear a little bit from a couple of the players on the Grizz team. You spoke with both Saeed Pridgett and Kendall Manuel at practice this week, Coulter. And we'll start with Saeed Pridgett. Just simply asked about this team who has, really developed with Saeed as the leader and a bunch of young guys, how they've come along. And just asked, how proud are you for the progress of this team? Here's what he said.
It's been crazy, and it's amazing because, like you said, sometimes I'm not even on the court and we're having good runs in sports. So it's amazing to watch how much of our young guys have improved.
No doubt. I mean, they really have improved a lot. To his point, I mean, it's so funny to hear him say, "Look, sometimes I'm not even out there." That's how good he is. Of course, he would have to be out there for them to have success, but normally he is. But they've found a way at times to even extend leads when he's been on the bench because of the progression of these young kids.
We talked so much about the close games in the Big Sky this year. I think that it was through the first half of the season, there was something like 40 or 41 games decided by 4 points or less. Montana has put that notion in the rear view over their last 5. They're winning their games by 17.5 points. That's obviously including when they doubled up Weber State almost, 72-37. But you take that even out of the sample size, and they're still winning their games by 14 points and some change. So the Grizz have been handling teams over the last 5 games, starting with that Montana State win, but also including that good home win over Eastern Washington and the domination of Weber State. So the Grizz, I think that they've really continued to turn the corner, but I think that's what Travis DeCuire has continued to tout as well. They're playing really well, but they still have a lot of room left to grow.
No doubt. No question that they do. By the way, you spoke with Kendall Manuel as well, and, the Grizzlies had that 2-game losing streak where they lost at Weber State and then lost at Portland State. The next game was against Montana State, a game that they won by double digits, by 14, and since that time, they've won 5 straight. You asked Kendall Manuel, well, what changed? This is what he said.
Just our intensity on defense and our attention to detail on defense. I think that's been our biggest thing, and we knew that to be one of the better teams in this league, that we're going to have to defend at a high level, and I think our focus have turned from offense to being able to play more defense, and it's turned out pretty well so far.
It's interesting that he highlights the defensive side of the ball, especially for a guy who is, clearly an offensive weapon and a shooter and all that. And you always expect that a Travis DeCuire team, a Chris Cobb team, is going to always have defense on the front of its mind. But even though that's an established part and facet central to what the Montana Grizzlies program is, you got to reiterate. I mean, right? You have to continue to keep it out there in the front of things, and all of a sudden you have a couple of games where teams are scoring above their average, and they're outscoring you as a matter of percentage from the field and that kind of thing, and the coaches go, okay, let's rally back up. This is what we do here. We shut people down.
No doubt. Well, I think that it is coach speak, but also it's just so true. Travis DeCuire always talks about, you asked him the great question about the 50-40. Grizz shooting over 50%, holding their opponent under 40%. Well, as Travis responded, he said, you have a great chance of shooting over 50% if you're getting stops, because if you're getting stops, that means you're getting out in transition. This Grizz team specifically has become so good over the last 8 to 10 games in the half court because of Saeed Pridgett's evolution as a player, his willingness to pass, but also the fact that he's got guys knocking down shots. There was a moment in time this year where Pridgett's always been a willing passer. But when he was making that skip pass to the corner, Josh Vasquez wasn't hitting shots. Timmy Falls wasn't hitting shots. The coaching staff basically said, all right, Saeed, you don't have to be a willing passer anymore. Go get yours, because if those guys aren't knocking down shots, it don't matter if you're getting double teamed. We need you to shoot the ball. We can't just be missing open three-pointers. Well, those guys started knocking down shots. That's really revolutionized Montana's half-court offense. But this team is best in transition. Timmy Falls on the ball when this team's in transition or on the fast break, he's one of the best in the conference. Saeed Pridgett, he might be the best one-on-one guy in the open court in the entire league. So getting stops leads to transition, and I think that's why these guys continue to talk about the defense leading to the offense.
It's Cat Grizz tomorrow, 7 o'clock for the men, tipping off from the Brick Breeden Fieldhouse. How exciting is it to play in a game like this? Well, here's what Saeed thinks.
I'm very excited for the game. The environment there is crazy, so I'll be very hyped. Probably won't be able to sleep that much for the night before the games because I'll be very excited to play.
I mean, you can't even sleep. That's how pumped up you are. I mean, that's getting there. So we'll see if you can get at least a little bit of rest overnight tonight and be ready to go for tomorrow. But can't wait for this basketball game. Going to be fun. We're going to talk more about this game and some more of the specifics on what needs to happen for Montana State to pull the upset if that were to happen for the Cats here tomorrow evening. But next, we want to highlight the women's game. We'll hear from Shannon Schwan, Mackenzie Johnston, and the talk of the Lady Grizz and Montana State Bobcats, who played into overtime the first game in a thriller. So we'll look forward to this one tomorrow. We'll talk about it right after this. Hey, the Polaris New Year's sales event is on, and now is the time to find your perfect ride at Kurtz Polaris. The financing as low as 3.99% APR for 36 months and savings of up to $3,500. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula and on Highway 83 in Sealy. The mountains, they're full of snow, and Kurtz has all the best machines, apparel, and accessories to take full advantage of the season. Online at KurtzPolaris.com. The most fun you can have in snow. Kurtz Polaris, winter awaits.
Have you been in an accident and have no idea what to do? I'm here with Catherine from the Advocates Injury Attorneys.
Unfortunately, people are injured in accidents every day, and dealing with the insurance company can add even more pain to an already bad situation. That is where hiring the Advocates can help. Let us guide you through the process and take on the hassles for you so you can just focus on getting better.
If you've been injured in an accident, give the Advocates a call, 406-640-4444, or online at montanaadvocates.com. The Advocates are on your side.
Seafood lovers, it's time to get cracking at the Montana Club's annual Lobster Fest. Feast on one of our 19 mouth-watering lobster dishes, live Maine lobster, succulent lobster tail, and tantalizing one-of-a-kind lobster specialties. 3 big days, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, March 5th through the 7th. It only happens once a year. Don't miss it. See the menu at montanaclub.com. The Montana Club's Lobster Fest on Brooks and North Reserve, Missoula.
Farmers State Bank is proud to share that our customer, Phillipsburg Brewing Company, has been crafting quality, handcrafted beer since 2012. Congratulations to Nolan and Kathy Smith and the entire team at Phillipsburg Brewing Company on their award-winning brews. The next time you see her, ask Kathy why she calls Farmers State Bank best bank ever. Farmers State Bank, helping businesses succeed since 1907. Member FDIC.
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable with. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today, 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
Grizz Greats, the Coaching Tree Podcast, Episode 6 is out now with Pat Kennedy. Pat Kennedy was the head coach of the University of Montana for 2 seasons in 03 and 04, in between Don Holst and Larry Krastowiak. He's the one head coach since Judd Heathcote who was outside the University of Montana coaching tree, and his short tenure as head coach at the UM was largely unsuccessful, going under 500 both seasons. That said, his tenure at the University of Montana also marked a turning point for the Grizzly program. What started with great optimism and eventually led to the program giving way to Larry Krastowiak and Pat Kennedy's personal story are also very intriguing. An assistant coach to the great Jim Valvano, and head coach to a bevy of first-round NBA picks, including Heisman Trophy winner Charlie Ward at Florida State. Our conversation with Pat Kennedy is both illuminating and highly entertaining. So check out Grizz Greats, the Coaching Tree Podcast, Episode 6, out now wherever you get your podcasts. Grizz Greats is brought to us by Blackfoot Communications, Stockman's Bar, and Berkshire Hathaway Real Estate.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon, Ryan Tutel, Colton Nuanez. Here's some sports news for you. The Montana State men's basketball team fell at Portland State last night 87-77. After going to the break up 3, MSU starting point guard Harold Frey went down with an apparent ankle injury just 2 minutes into the second half. From that point, the Vikings were able to score 51 points in the second half to win by 10. The loss drops MSU to 8-7 heading into the Cat Grizz game tomorrow. The Montana State women, on the other hand, ripped off their 10th consecutive win, a 98-67 dismantling of Portland State in Bozeman. Fallon Frigge led 4 Bobcat players in double figures with 19 points. MSU is now 14-1 in Big Sky play. Tomorrow, the Cats and Grizz will match up for the second and final time on the hardwood in the regular season. The Lady Grizz look to avenge their loss to Montana State from earlier this month. It was a game in which Montana led by 11 heading into the fourth quarter, but then went 0 of 15 from the floor in the final period and ended up losing by 5 in overtime. The Lady Grizz, though, have won 3 of 4 since that game and entered tomorrow's contest at 9-6 in the league. Tip-off from Bozeman is at 2 o'clock. The Montana men will look to continue their recent dominance of the rivalry. Now in his 6th season, Travis DeCure has only lost once to Montana State. The Grizz beat the Cats by 14 in Missoula in the first matchup and are currently 12-3, a game up on Northern Colorado and Eastern Washington. Welcome back. Talk some men's hoop. Now let's talk some women's hoops. Cat Grizz tomorrow afternoon, 2 o'clock tip from the Brick. It's Tutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. Outstanding to be with all of you across the state on this Friday. Happy weekend to you. You can check us out on the social medias if you would like to. 102.9 ESPN on Twitter and Instagram. You can also get Coulter and I on Twitter at Skyline Sports MT and at Gus Tutel. Are you ready for a new truck? Get to Mildenberger Motors in Hamilton for the best deals on the best trucks, Duramax, Chevy, and GMC. And Coulter, you're over there in Bozeman at the Universal Athletic there hanging out. Look, if folks want to get themselves sorted out for the game tomorrow, all the Cat gear, all the Grizz gear, you go to Universal Athletic wherever you are.
They got this, the old school Seattle Mariners hat that's not not the blue with the logo, not the blue and gray, but like the true blue, the royal blue that Ken Griffey Jr. made famous with the yellow S. They got one of those in stock here. I'm looking at it. I think I'm probably going to have to buy it, even though I'm not even a Mariners fan. So much nostalgia.
David Graff has an old school Mariners lid on today with the pitchfork M on.
Right. I like that one. That one's been around for a while. This is like vintage 90s, though. I think this is a very 90s hat. I think I might have to get it. But if you're looking for some gear, whether it's to watch the Bobcat Grizz game in Missoula at a local watering hole, or you're on your way over here, or you're already in Bozeman, stop on by Universal Athletic. I'm here right here on 712 7th Avenue. It's the Universal Athletic headquarters, so the most beautiful amongst a entire set of beautiful Universal Athletic stores in the state of Montana. They have Bobcat and Grizz gear for sale across the state, and it's also baseball and softball season. So if you're gearing up for spring diamond sports, come to Universal Athletic as well. They have sliding shorts. They got catchers, mitts, and pads and helmets, batting helmets, bats, balls, everything you need for your diamond sports as well. Go to universalathletic.com. Check out all their inventory or find a location near you.
Coulter, Montana State, Montana tomorrow in women's basketball. The Cats have been absolutely on a roll. Tricia Binford has her team with 10 consecutive wins. They win by 31 last night, dominating Portland State, who won the conference tournament last year, by the way, just absolutely rolling right now. That said, the closest they've come to a loss over that 10-game winning streak was in Missoula against this Lady Grizz basketball team, who looked like they had the game in hand before going on just a terrible cold streak, couldn't find a bucket, literally did not make a shot in the fourth quarter, and ended up losing in overtime in that game. But when you talk about this matchup, if you want to talk about this from the perspective of Montana State, you say, hey, come hell or high water, we won the basketball game, and now we're in Bozeman, and we're rolling, and we are going to, do this thing again. If you're the Lady Grizz, you say, hey, we had the game in hand. We were the better team for, 3/4 of that basketball game. We know that we can play with this team. And by the way, I think Montana has a good argument to say from a talent standpoint that they have the players that you need to have to go toe-to-toe with Montana State. The Lady Grizz, though, have not been nearly as good on the road as they have been at home. I mean, there's a lot of teams for whom that's the case. But this is going to be a very interesting and intriguing matchup to me tomorrow in Bozeman.
Well, I'm just so interested to see if Montana comes out in a gimmick defense or not, because that's been the case the last several times these teams have played. The only time Shannon Swain has ever posted a win over Montana State, it was on the legs of that zone defense that they played. And great shooters for Montana State like Delaney Junkermeyer, Hannah Cottle, Tori Martell, they missed a ton of shots against that zone. And, I mean, you got to knock down the shots, no doubt. But a lot of it was just Montana State being in their own heads, not making the shots. That almost happened to them this last time in Missoula, too. Lady Grizz played a matchup zone for all 4 quarters before switching into a more traditional style defense at overtime. And it's like Mackenzie Johnson said in the postgame. She said, hey, our whole strategy was just to confuse them by the way that we were switching things and let them shoot threes. And if they started making threes, we'd get out on them or we'd change our defense, but they just never did. And Montana State, they missed 19 out of their first 23 pointers. This Bobcat team has not been that tremendous shooting the ball from the outside. They're shooting 33.6% as a team, which is not elite. It's okay. In the women's league, it's okay. But they do have some outstanding shooters. Martha Cooter is shooting over 40% from 3. Tori Martell is shooting over 40% from 3. Oleana Squires has struggled a little bit in her senior year. She's only shooting 31%. But as we know, when she gets hot, she can get hot. And like we saw at the overtime, I mean, Oleana Squires missed 8 3-pointers in a row. What'd she do in overtime? She hit back-to-back threes. So when she gets settled in, she's still a threat. I guess what I'm getting at is that the Lady Grizz had a good game plan. They executed it well. But also Montana State was sort of folding in the moment until they weren't. And then they just basically decided, all right, let's reel this in. We're not going to just cast threes against this matchup zone. Instead, we're going to throw the ball to our best player, Fallon Frigi, and get out the way. Let her work in the post. Let her get to the mid-range. And on the other side, just play as hard as we can defensively. And they held Montana to 0 of 15 shooting in the fourth quarter and rallied all the way back. So this is going to be a really interesting matchup because I do agree with you, Gus. I think that the Lady Grizz have a lot of talent, but I also think that they've been missing a mental element of the game for several years now. They need to figure out how to embrace and consistently play at the level that they sometimes can attain. On the opposite side of that, this Montana State team, I mean, I have covered the Big Sky Women's League. That's the sport I've covered the longest in the Big Sky. I cannot remember a women's basketball team in the Big Sky that scored 200 points over the span of 2 games. Montana State scored 102 points against Weber State and 98 points last night. When you watch these games, they're putting on straight-up offensive clinics. I mean, they're getting a good shot on 9 out of 10 possessions, basically. And you see it reflected in the score. Against Weber State, they put 6 players in double figures and had 2 more with 8 points. Last night against Portland State, 4 more in double figures. Over the last 6 games, they've had at least 4 double figures scoring 5 times, and they've had 5 double figures scoring 3 times. So their balance is insane. The way that they're sharing the ball is great. They are absolutely the deepest team in the league, and confidence breeds confidence, right? I mean, this is a Montana State team now that's won 10 in a row. They're flirting with the all-time Montana State record for wins in a row. They're already up to 14-1 in league play, and depending on what happens around the rest of the league, Montana State could get pretty close to clinching the league title if they won on Saturday. So they have more to play for than just rivalry dominance. So it's going to be interesting because I do think in this specific women's matchup, we talked about maybe neither of the men's teams feeling that much pressure. To me, I think that there is a lot of pressure on both these teams coming into this game just because of what's on the line for the Cats. They're in the middle of a spectacular season. One of the only things that could tarnish their tremendous season would be a rivalry loss. I mean, that would be a black eye on an otherwise great campaign. I think that even if they lost tomorrow, they're still going to win the league. But they could really have, another cherry on top, and they could be in the mix for that 19 conference wins, which would be pretty much unprecedented. I don't think anybody's ever won 19 conference games since the league expanded the schedule. And for the Lady Grizz, it's a gigantic game. I think that when you analyze just Shannon Swain's tenure, you don't talk about the tradition that Robin Selvig established. You don't talk about 865 wins and 21 trips to the NCAA tournament. Instead, you just look at the last 4 years. The Lady Grizz are certainly better, but they're 1-6 against Montana State. As we know, that is one of, if not the most important factors when you're talking about coaching stability. Shannon Swain's in a contract year, so a win could go a long ways towards affirming the improvements of the Lady Grizz, and a loss, it could be damning for their coaching staff. We'll see. But I think there's a lot more on the line and a lot more pressure on the two teams coming into the women's game, which will be the first game tomorrow, Cat Grizz at Brick Breeden Fieldhouse.
Totally agree with you. You had an opportunity, we both did, to speak with Shannon Schweyen after practice, or actually just before practice earlier this week. And you asked a very good question. Do you want your team to look at this last game, not just in the film sense, but in general? Do you want them to consider that and use that as motivation, or do you want them to flush it and start this thing anew all over? Here's what she said.
After we watched it, we said, okay, we're putting this behind us. However, when you're preparing for them again, you kind of have to bring it back out and go through it again, and it's painful to look at. All but the first 3 quarters were exceptional to look at. But, you got to take the good with the bad, and you got to learn from it and look at it a little bit and go, this is what we wouldn't do again. This is what we would do again. We'd settle for these. We wouldn't settle for that. And, every day is a new day. And, we got to go down there on Saturday and just control what we can control, which is basically us.
There you go, Shannon Schweyen from practice earlier this week. Mackenzie Johnston was also there. She is 3rd in the league in terms of minutes played. We'll talk about her endurance here in a moment. But initially, what does it mean to play in this game, which might be the last one against Montana State for the senior?
It means a lot to me, especially after that last game we had up until that 4th quarter, obviously. But it's a huge game no matter what, and it's a big game for us just to beat them so we can get that first round bye, because I think that's really what we're looking for right now. But it's such a cool atmosphere, and that might be the best crowd we'll get the rest of the season besides playing here. So I'm looking forward to playing them again and getting another crack at them. The outcomes haven't been what I've wanted, but for my senior year, if it is the last time we play them, it'll mean a lot to me to beat them.
That is a good point, too. She talked a little bit later on, but if you get a win against Montana State, they're now the travel partner that you have for the last 4 games. So in addition to the win that you have, a lot of the teams you assume that are going to end up playing the Cats are going to lose those games, and so you sort of gain a game on the field every time that a team loses to Montana State. That's a team that you won. And now with the Lady Grizz at 9-6, they are in the 5th and final spot for a bye in Boise after that loss to Idaho State. But they still obviously control their own destiny, and a win against Montana State actually helps them far more than just the 1 W.
It certainly does, and it also gives them a little bit of momentum going into what's going to be a tough stretch. NAU is absolutely the surprise of the Big Sky Conference, men or women. Lori Payne has NAU rolling, and so that game next week is going to be huge. Yeah. And then they're going to have to play against Northern Colorado, who has not been that good this year, but is a team that won in Dahlberg Arena earlier this year too. So the Lady Grizz schedule is certainly challenging. But, Ryan, we talk a lot about the concept of tradition, and tradition definitely plays into recruiting, there's no question. But I oftentimes wonder how much new age kids, how much tradition that's from a long time ago resonates with them. And I've been doing a lot of interviews with these recruits that are coming for football for both the Cats and the Grizz. And I always ask them, especially the Montana kids, did you grow up a Cat fan, did you grow up a Grizz fan? And the guys that are coming to play for Coach Houck now, if they say yes, then I say, do you remember when Coach Houck was there the first time? And a lot of them jump at it, yeah, I totally remember. I remember how dominant Montana was. But other guys say, I really didn't. I wasn't quite old enough to really follow sports that heavily then. Because you got to think now, we're 2020. When Bobby Houck was taking teams to the national championship game 2008, 2009, these 17-year-old kids were 5. They were 6.
Right.
So they were just starting to get into it. So a lot of times, if you're indoctrinated by your parents, okay, you're following it at that age, but it's not resonating with you like it might have 5 years ago. The thing about the Lady Grizz program that is so transcendent is that the tradition is so long-standing that it's impossible to ignore. You don't have to ask Mackenzie Johnston if she remembers when Mandy Morales and Sonia Rogers played 12 or 13 years ago, or when Megan Harrington and Ann Lake and all those gals played in the mid-'90s, or when Shannon Schweyen played in 91. Obviously, that's way before any of these current Lady Grizz were even alive. The stretch and the impact that the Lady Grizz program had on basketball in Montana, just like we talked about in our interview with Robin Selvig and Megan Harrington before the debut of The House That Rob Built, the great documentary that debuted at the Big Sky Documentary Film Festival last night, the Wilma. The concept of that documentary, the fact that Robin Selvig used the vehicle of basketball to, quite honestly, change the culture in Montana in terms of opportunities for females, for young ladies, for especially young ladies that come from small towns or come from Native American reservations. Those opportunities are things that truly changed the society in Montana. And so you don't have to ask Mackenzie Johnston if she remembers this specific player or that specific time, because their run of success was all of it. It is the story of women's athletics in Montana. Mackenzie Johnston grew up in Anaconda before she moved to Helena Capital. Some of the great players that ever played for Lady Grizz are from Anaconda. I guarantee you she looked up to Tori Hill and Allie Hurley. And so that's where the pressure really comes in, because Mackenzie Johnston, you just heard her say, these games have not gone how I wanted them to go. There's no question that for girls like her and Sophia Stiles, who grew up in another hotbed in Malta, who produced so many Lady Grizz players. I mean, Sophia Stiles was coached by ex-Lady Grizz her whole middle school and high school careers. You don't have to tell those girls. You don't have to remind them about the tradition. They came to Montana to carry on that tradition, and it hasn't happened for them like it did for generations of young ladies before them. And I know specifically with Mackenzie, it's something that drives her crazy. And I think that she herself has played outstanding in the last 4 Cat Grizz games. She was absolutely their best player in Missoula earlier this month. But it's eating at them for sure. And I think that adds to the pressure, but I think it also adds to the motivation. And what a way for them to go out on top, especially within the scope of the regular season, by not only posting a rivalry win in Bozeman. It would be their first win in Bozeman as a group. But David confirms for us, he just sent me a message that said Montana State will clinch the league title with a win on Saturday. So not only do you get a chance to knock off the first-place team, not only do you improve your standing in the Big Sky Conference, but you also then get a win in Bozeman, which could be huge not only for the stretch run of this season, but for your legacy and your, especially Mackenzie Johnston's case, the legacy you leave behind as a Lady Grizz.
Stu Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. And Coulter, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, you talk about the history of the program that is the University of Montana women's basketball, history, that legacy that's there. And I think it absolutely has played into, especially these rivalry games. I mean, if you look at the last game that these two teams played, you don't just go 0-15. There were some missed open easy shots that these girls make 100 times in a row, and then all of a sudden they don't go. And one team played, I think, sort of like they felt like they lost the game in the sense of Montana State, so they sort of played with a certain abandon, but you could feel the tension building with every passing minute, and it was very counterproductive for the Lady Grizz in Missoula in that basketball game on February the 1st. And that isn't just within the game. I think it's the scope of a lot of things where this program has not been what it was, prior, and working, trying to get back to that, and going against the best team in the conference, which the Lady Grizz occupied for so long. And that, though, it's this odd thing where it's hard to overcome, like, the nerves of it or the tension of it, no doubt. And yet it's that very thing that's maybe keeping you from being successful at times.
Oh, no question. I mean, everybody wants to analyze. We did this with Grizz football, too, when there was a lull. What's the deal? Do they have less talent? I do think there was a little bit of a talent dip, both in terms of the kids that were coming out of the state of Montana, as well as the kids that the Grizz were bringing in their program. But it was not as much of a talent dip as it was a dip in the mentality. And that's what we have with the Lady Grizz. The Lady Grizz, early in Shannon Schwain's tenure, had a dip because of injuries. I mean, they lost the preseason MVP in Kaylee Valley 2 years in a row. That absolutely killed them. She was a 20 points per game scorer. They also lost Alicia Sims. But to me, the last 2 years, the number one thing they've been missing is mental toughness, because when things go right for this team, I truly think they're the second best team in the league. When it goes wrong, they melt down. They turn into a puddle, and that's what happened to them in Missoula. And I really think it's all between the ears. So how do you find that mental toughness at this point in the season? It seems like when they play schools that aren't Montana State and Idaho, and they did have a good win against Idaho last week, so maybe that is a turning point for them. But I don't know how you find it, but I do think if they can find it tomorrow, it's something they might be able to ride all the way into the tournament.
It's Tutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. Coulter is in Bozeman at the Universal Athletic there. You can go by, say hello to him if you're around Bozeman. Get yourself some Cat Grizz gear before the games tomorrow. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back. Some predictions and expectations for these games to wrap up the week right after this.
Matcha is a versatile green tea chock full of health benefits. Here at Florence Coffee, our high-quality matcha is full of antioxidants, fiber, and chlorophyll, while providing rich, smooth flavor to any matcha drink. Whether you order your matcha hot, iced, or blended, it'll taste great and give your body the boost it needs. Come to any Florence Coffee location or go to florencecoffeeco.com.
Hey, it's Coulter, and I'm here with Catherine from The Advocates. If you've been in a car accident or need help dealing with the insurance companies, you should give The Advocates a call. They can tell you if you have a case right over the phone.
That's right. It doesn't cost anything to call, and we'd be happy to talk to you and assess your situation. You don't want to have to deal with contacting the insurance companies and setting up a claim. We can do that for you. We take the hassle out of the process, so you can just focus on getting better.
There you go, folks. If you've been injured in an accident, give The Advocates a call, 406-640-4444, or online at montanaadvocates.com. You deserve The Advocates.
Grizz Grace, the Coaching Tree Podcast, Episode 6 is out now with Pat Kennedy. Pat Kennedy was the head coach of the University of Montana for 2 seasons in 03 and 04, in between Don Holst and Larry Krastowiak. He's the one head coach since Judd Heathcote who was outside the University of Montana coaching tree, and his short tenure as head coach at the UM was largely unsuccessful, going under 500 both seasons. That said, his tenure at the University of Montana also marked a turning point for the Grizzly program. What started with great optimism and eventually led to the program giving way to Larry Krastowiak and Pat Kennedy's personal story are also very intriguing. An assistant coach to the great Jim Valvano, and a head coach to a bevy of first-round NBA picks, including Heisman Trophy winner Charlie Ward at Florida State. Our conversation with Pat Kennedy is both illuminating and highly entertaining. So check out Grizz Grace, the Coaching Tree Podcast, Episode 6, out now wherever you get your podcasts. Grizz Grace is brought to us by Blackfoot Communications, Stockman's Bar, and Berkshire Hathaway Real Estate.
Imagination Brewing is hosting a benefit for Horse Haven, Montana's New Beginnings program for rescue horses and youth. On Thursday, March 12th, see a special screening of the award-winning film, A Horse, A Convict, A Chance for Change, from Equus International Film Festival. Meet Mustang trainer Joe Misner and the folks from Reins of Hope, who connect adopted Mustangs with permanent homes. Enjoy some beer, learn about equine rescue, and help Horse Haven, Montana continue their mission. Thursday, March 12th from 5 to 8 at Imagination Brewing.
Join Meals on Wheels in the annual March for Meals to celebrate the seniors in our communities and the ways we can all support them. All across the country, communities will join together to take a stand for the millions of seniors struggling with hunger and isolation. So join the march. Celebrate March for Meals your own way. March with us.
Go to MissoulaAgingServices.org or text M4M20 to 71777.
Tutel and Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Missoula.
ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. Happy weekend to you. Thanks for being with us here as we roll through Friday evening with you. We appreciate it very much. If you missed anything in the show, you can check it out on the podcast. The podcast available all the time, wherever you get your podcasts. It's there thanks to the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel and Blackfoot Communications. Also, want to remind you that if you want to find us on the social medias, you can do just that at 1029 ESPN on Twitter and on Instagram. Follow along there. Coulter is at the Universal Athletic in Bozeman. The Montana State Hall of Fame induction ceremony is tonight, and then the Grizzly Cat rivalry renews tomorrow with the women at 2 o'clock and the men at 7 in basketball. Want to remind everybody there's also a couple of things going on this evening. First of all, if you're in Missoula, you got the Bruins hockey team, Missoula Junior Bruins. They're playing tonight at the Glacier Ice Rink. But the biggest game of the night, Coulter, The Montana Grizzly lacrosse team against the Pacific Lutheran University lacrosse team, the Mighty Lutes. Not looking that great, perhaps.
Oh, boy. Are you and Tuck Dog got a big bet on this or what?
Well, no. The Tucker can't do anything
that's true.
like
I guess
that.
he can't be betting on his own team.
So we can't do anything
right.
but just talk a little smack. But I must say, I'm not really prepared to go out there with my alma mater on this one because, not to say that I'm any kind of high watermark, but it might be the case.
I wish you the best of luck, and I hope that you have some sort of bragging rights at the end of this all, but I doubt that's going to be the case.
Yeah, I think it probably won't. I think Montana's a pretty good club, and, PLU's, well, not. Colter, the Cats and the Grizz tomorrow. On the men's side of this thing, I think it's really interesting. By the way, last night in the Big Sky Conference, crazy night. Northern Colorado was up, I think, 14 at halftime and over Southern Utah. Eastern Washington was up 13 at halftime over Sacramento State. Both those teams won by a bucket. Northern Colorado needed a 3 late to overcome Southern Utah, and Eastern Washington a 1-point win after blowing huge leads at halftimes for those two teams. But they get the dubs, and now they are still just one game back of the Montana Grizzlies.
I have a differing opinion on Eastern Washington these last couple of weeks. They seem like they're not faltering yet, but they're sort of teetering on the line. They have not played as well since they lost in Missoula. They have been sort of just up and down, and I'm not really sure if that's because Montana and Montana State sort of showed a blueprint on how to slow down what was an offense that was averaging close to 90 points per game the first half of the season. But their offense in conference play was down quite a bit. They're averaging 75 a game in conference play, which is okay, but it's nowhere close to what they were doing during the non-conference and early in conference play. They've had several different players. Basically, I think everybody decided to take the Grizz model, right? Let Jacob Davidson and Mason Peatling get theirs, and don't let the other guys kill you. Don't let Kim Aiken kill you. Don't let Kassan Rouse kill you. Don't let Jack Perry kill you. Those guys are the guys that just get so many open shots when the stars on Eastern Washington draw the extra attention. So I think that people are kind of taking the blueprint out of the book. But even with Eastern faltering a little bit, they're still only a game back at the Grizz. They're 11-4 in league play, and they've won back-to-back games at Portland State and against Sacramento State. So margin of victory, even if it's not totally impressive, they're still sitting right there in good shape. But Northern Colorado is interesting because I do think that it's so interesting the way you consume the success of a team, right? Northern Colorado, I think, coming into this year, people really wondered what they were going to be. No Jordan Davis. He's second all-time leading scorer in the history of the conference. They did return Jonah Radabah and Bodie Hume. But I voted Northern Colorado, I think, 5th in my preseason poll. Yeah. And so for them to be second, I think they're exceeding expectations. I think that Jeff Linder does a great job.
And they truly look like the second-best team. I mean, they're not just second by record. They look like they deserve to be where they are.
Do you agree with me? The fact that Northern Colorado and Eastern Washington have identical records, both in conference and overall, but you just have a lot more confidence in Northern Colorado right now, right?
100%. Absolutely.
I'm
no question.
I'm not articulating.
And I think, part of it is their best player is perhaps the best defender in the Big Sky Conference, and they have great role definition in general, whereas Eastern Washington has lost some role definition to me and has slid a little bit, even though they're still right there in terms of the standings in 11-4 and all that. But Colter, quickly, we just got a couple of minutes. Let's talk about tomorrow. For Montana State to pull the upset, what do they need to do?
Man, I just maybe I'm a little jaded because this rivalry's been so lopsided over the last 10 years. I mean, it took Tyler Hall having the single most ridiculous shooting performance I have ever seen live in a Bobcat basketball game for the Bobcats to beat the Grizz. The only time I've covered a Bobcat Grizz basketball game in which the Cats won. I think that's what it takes. I think Harold Frey, but that's the thing that's crazy, right, is Harold Frey scored 37 points and hit 7 threes last time, and they still lost by 15 points.
Yeah, right.
I really just don't know what you do because I don't think that Montana State has near the firepower. I think the only way that you can really win is if you take Saeed Pridgett and Kendall Manuel completely out of the game. But how do you do that? No one has even come close to doing that this season.
I mean, you are not going to outscore Montana if you're Montana State to me in terms of, even if Harold Frey does play. So it has to get done defensively for the Bobcats.
Absolutely.
They have to muddy this thing up and hope that the Grizzlies miss shots and then just stick around late, and then maybe somebody does something special. Maybe Layden Ricketts, a Montana kid, catches fire and starts banging away threes in the corner, and you pull it. But I don't see a really great path for them to get a W in this game.
Well, you're absolutely right, because this is a great stat here. Montana State has not won a game this season when they've given up 70 points. Not one. They're 0 for. So it's a race to 70, right? In Missoula, when the Grizz hit 70, the Cats cut it to 6 in the second half in Missoula. And then as soon as the Grizz scored 70, the kid who covers the Cats of the Bozeman Chronicle turned around and looked at me and said, "It's over." And I said, "Yeah, I know. You're right, because they can't win a game if they give up more than 70.
Well, Coulter, this was a fun show. Looking forward to the games tomorrow. Again, the women at 2, the men at 7. We will be on hand for those games. Can't wait for it. Coulter and Bozeman already at the Universal Athletic. We certainly appreciate them for letting him come hang out there, spend some time. You got plenty of time between now and the games tomorrow. Go get your Cat gear, go get your Grizz gear, and represent on the last Cat Grizz game of the regular season. Looking forward to it. Coulter, excellent work as always. David in the back, appreciate you very much. Enjoy your Friday evening. Enjoy your weekend. If you're driving over, keep it between the ditches, boys and girls. We'll see you on Monday.
Have you been in an accident and have no idea what to do? I'm here with Catherine from the Advocates Injury Attorneys.
Unfortunately, people are injured in accidents every day, and dealing with the insurance company can add even more pain to an already bad situation. That is where hiring the Advocates